Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Hi everyone, it's Noelle. Before we get started, I want to let you know that as we begin to unpack the end of this particular episode of Buffy, we get into a discussion of white supremacy and how it shapes the antagonist of the story. And as white people who are relatively new to having discussions like these, we are going to get some things wrong. And I say that first as a content warning for any of you who don't want to listen to yet another well-meaning white person muddle through a conversation about race. And second, as an invitation to other white folks to push past the fear of saying something wrong that can keep us stuck and keep us from doing this really hard, really necessary work, especially when it comes to content that we love. So having said that, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and cowboy guy, Lani and Rich.
I'm film scholar and comfortador, Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm concept developer and essence of the Slayer's power, Dr. Kelly Jones. And we're here today to talk about Restless, the 22nd episode and finale of season 4.
Restless aired on May 23rd, 2000, and was written and directed by Joss Whedon.
As you know, and as we know, Still Pretty is, as always, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast. We will definitely talk about what is coming up in season 5. So if you haven't seen it, I don't know, maybe watch it. Have a lost weekend. It'll be, make yourself some new car smell popcorn and just go to town. Why have you come to our lonely small town, which has no post office and very few exports? All right, let's go on patrol.
In Restless, as a result of casting the magical enjoining spell at the end of Primeval, the spirit of the first Slayer tries to kill Willow, Xander, Giles, and Buffy in their dreams. And we're all now just realizing that the spirit of the first podcaster may be coming for us next. It's possible we didn't think this all the way through.
Also, there's a cheese man.
Don't know where the hell that came from.
I would like to know why the cheese man is not played by Joss Whedon.
I don't know. I think Joss Whedon should be the cheese man. I think Joss Whedon is the cheese man.
I mean, the cheese man is all of us.
I just don't get it. I have tried to understand it. I have Googled it. I'm like, writer's room joke? Drunk with cheese? I don't get it.
I have a theory that it's a cheese man.
I thought you had a real theory that there's something to the cheese man.
I do. I actually have a real theory. Do you want to hear my real theory about the cheese man?
I do want to hear your cheese man theory.
Okay, so obviously the spirit of the first Slayer is the connecting factor with all these dreams, right? Mm-hmm. But we need something else to indicate that this isn't, she's not like leaping from dream to dream. This is shared space, especially because the dreams refer to each other. Mm-hmm. So we need something in addition to the first Slayer to cue the audience that, no, these 4 people really are in the same headspace. to one degree or another. Now,
they live in the same world.
Is the cheese man the best way to do that? I don't think so, except that Buffy likes cheese. And we start off with Willow, Willow's whole thing about identity, her identity. And there's this kind of subtle, I don't really think that Willow has as many hang-ups about her sexuality as Joss Whedon seems to think Willow has about her sexuality.
Yes, yeah.
But the cheese man appearing backstage for the first time as part of Willow's dream, when Willow's dream is really about Buffy in a lot of ways, and when poor Riley is grasping at straws about how to approach Buffy, Willow tells him she likes cheese.
Yes.
So there's this kind of, so the cheese man is kind of a creation of Willow's unconscious mind, but also really just a cue to the audience that no, these dreams are all connected. These are not 4 separate dreamscapes. It's one movie. It's one story.
I think the audience gets that from the element of the first Slayer and the fact that they kind of will reference like some of Willow and Xander being referenced in Giles' dream. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a nice theory. I think that it's a very generous theory. That it's not just some stupid ass joke that Joss Whedon thought was funny that he just threw in
Lani,
as a random element.
I think all of my readings of this episode are going to be very, very generous readings. I do not think that 90% of what I'm about to say was the intent of anyone involved in any way. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, Restless is a big problem. All right, so we've already started having this discussion, but let me go ahead and welcome our guest, Dr. Kelly Jones. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about Restless.
Thanks for having me, considering that I invited myself, put myself on your calendar and said, I'm coming to talk to y'all about Restless.
Oh, and I'm so glad that you did, because Noelle and I both fucking hate this episode. So we need representation from the Love Restless camp. You guys do tend to have a lot more, I think, patience for dream sequences generally than I do. Kelly, you actually like them, don't you?
I do. I really, really do.
I love that you love them.
And,
yes.
Well, and I'm so interested in other people's dreams, like just in general. And so dreams within story really, really delights me. And, I don't know, Restless shows some of that for these characters that I love. And we get some great foreshadowing and callbacks and these wonderful guests. I mean, we get Oz and Harmony and Olivia and Snyder. We get Snyder. And like so Adam. Good. I know, and Giles singing exposition. I mean, come on. Giles is singing the exposition.
Singing an exposition song is always nice.
Yes.
So I do like that. There are moments throughout this that I like. Yeah. Generally, though, dream sequences don't hit the mark for me because they feel like a cheap fare to, depth and poeticism and all of this kind of stuff that I just feel is very, very cheap and doesn't necessarily earn it. Although I will say that in Buffy, generally the Buffy dream sequences do have a narrative angle. And the thing is that for me, like my primary value, the thing that I go to story for is that narrative. Like I really enjoy getting lost inside the narrative, and dream sequences tend to bat me back out. Now, Noelle, you're kind of in the middle. Like you like dream sequences, right?
I do.
Generally?
Generally, I really like dream sequences. Especially on Buffy. Like give me Buffy psycho walking after Faith in a graveyard, or Alan, former assistant to the regional wannabe a giant snake, pulling Buffy down underwater, like that.
I'm sorry, I just suddenly got the Office reference there, and it just tickled me. Absolutely.
Well, I do put things in my script just for you. Really,
I appreciate
my whole
that.
point.
Thank you.
No, I do love a good dream sequence. Provided it is a good dream sequence, that it is thought, it's like well thought out, and that it adds something to the overall narrative. And I think in that sense, Restless is a really mixed bag, because it seems to me it looks to me like a combination. Here is some great expository, type information done in a metaphorical way about who these characters are, because we are literally inside their minds.
Yes.
But also, like, here's some deep symbolism that just looks really deep because it's kind of disconnected from the regular world, and woo! Like, it's not...
Right.
It's the reason that dreams work, I think, in our waking lives, in our non-television lives, is that they are messages from our unconscious mind to us. Now, there are a lot of theories about like what dreams are and what purpose they serve and blah, 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 blah. And that's not this podcast.
Right.
But part of why I think our own dreams are so compelling to us is that they speak to us in our own symbols. So, which is why you can have a dream where it's like, okay, we were at my house, but it wasn't really my house. It was my elementary school, but in the dream, it was my house, that kind of thing. Because you're clearly like, to me, dreams seem like trying to make sense of something that you don't fully grasp yet. So fictional dreams don't have that kind of removal from the self, from waking life, because they were written. Someone wrote these dreams.
Right. Exactly.
And when you write a dream, or when you write a fantasy sequence, or when you write something that is supposed to be very deeply in someone's POV, I think it's hard to get out of the way of your own, like, writerly what you want to be doing and really create that unconscious mind space for your audience. Am I making sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
The problem with Restless is the POV, is really what if Restless had been...
Oh, there's so many problems with the Restless.
I mean, but in terms of my enjoyment of something that is supposed to be a deep psychological experience for the viewer, I mean,
yes,
I love a story where you're not sure what is actual reality and what is, what is in the character's mind. I love an unreliable narrator. I love, I mean, my favorite movies include Fight Club and Black Swan. I love an unreliable narrator. I love a point of view where you're like, wait, did he just literally, what? I love that, but you don't, Restless doesn't do that. So there are parts I like. There are parts I really, really like. But there were moments that I can guarantee nope, I just fucking hate this. So at first I believe I was tasked with saying something brilliant to make Lani like Restless, and I'm like, no, I'm not that person.
No, I don't think you were tasked with that. I thought you liked it. So I was like, oh, good. Then maybe you'll make me like it, because nobody's been able to do that yet. Not even darling Kelly.
Oh, I didn't come on to be brilliant, sugar. It's too early in the morning for that.
You can't help it. You are naturally brilliant.
But I did make a dream chart where I
my God, she did.
No, I love that.
Can we extract this somehow and put it into a PDF somewhere?
And the PDF, sure, and put it in the show notes. Absolutely.
It should be available to be I'm in the script. I'm looking at the script and I'm like, she's making a chart. She's making
It's so cool.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
All right, Kelly, can you go through some of this? And can you explain what n=3 means? And what that is?
She did qualitative research on Restless, you guys. It's
I know. I freaking love it. I love it.
So I could not do a psychoanalysis of the dreams because it's not my area of expertise. And also, POV, like we were talking about, is problematic. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do an observation analysis. So I just made the little chart of each dreamer, and then I wanted to list who were the active participants in each dream, and then where were those active dream locations. So when you're in a research study, N is the number of individuals that you're talking about in a group.
Okay.
because I was just curious.
Okay.
So like Willow, I counted 11, people, and she was the only one who dreamed about Oz and Harmony. But she did not dream about Spike or Joyce. And then Xander had the most. His N was 12. He was the only person that dreamed about Snyder. And then, Xander's dad was in there. But he wasn't missing anyone from, like, if we compare the group that they all had in common, everyone is in Xander's dream, which I also thought was really kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, Giles was the only one who dreamed about Olivia, but Giles did not dream about Tara or Joyce. And then Buffy had the fewest number of active people in her dream. She was the only one that dreamed about Adam, but she did not actively dream about Spike, Willow, Xander, or Giles.
Oh,
Right.
interesting.
But what was
man.
really interesting about that was in Buffy's dream, with the exception of Riley, everyone Buffy actively dreams about dies. So we have Anya, Tara, Joyce, Riley, Adam, and the First Slayer. So like everybody's dead or is going to die, and Riley leaves the show, so that's still a loss for her.
Oh,
So I just thought that was really, really interesting.
Because
kind
Buffy
of
is the
comparing
most
that.
connected to death. That's
Right?
deep, Kelly.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, and Buffy's gonna die. I mean, Buffy has died, but like,
Oh, Buffy has died, and Buffy
Buffy's
will
going-
die.
Hey, I died twice.
Wow.
Damn.
That is really neat. I got to say that's very interesting, and that makes me slightly more interested in Restless. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it was also interesting just looking at it in terms of pattern. Giles and Willow both had dreams where they were performing on stage. They both had like their current lovers or partners in their dreams. And Xander and Buffy both had something with the initiative. And they both really had like a strong connection to Joyce. So, and they both had like past villains in there. So it's just really cool to me to kind of see like whose dreams relate, or like who seemed to feel the most in common. But I felt the most empathy like for and vulnerability from Xander and Willow. Whereas Buffy and Giles both seemed to be much more aware of what was going on and kind of more like work focused, Slayer and Watcher.
Yeah.
Whereas Xander and Willow felt much more just human.
Yeah.
I mean, Buffy and Giles tied for being the fucking worst.
Oh God.
I mean,
there's some bad stuff.
It's real bad. But do we want to go right into the real bad, or where are we going from here? Where do we go?
I don't know. Like we have so far jumped off like where we've all this scripted stuff. So I don't know. Like I think Noelle, you've got some interesting things talking about like whose dream, who owns this dream, like what is here. So maybe we can start with that and kind of melt through,
kind of ease on down the road, if you will.
Got so many notes.
And you were there, and you were there. Anyway. Yeah, so I talked a little bit already about the idea of shared dreaming, that this is a shared dream space. But this concept of shared dreaming, and specifically the idea of communication across dreams. I mean, you mentioned Xander, Willow, and Giles with the bronze in research mode, and of course Xander has the hole in his chest from his father ripping his heart out, which I'll get to. Oh my God. That feels very connected to the idea of sharing experiences of visual storytelling. In other words, Restless is about going to the movies. Now,
interesting.
I think in terms of a visual story that does this is about going to the movies. Lots of movies and TV shows have done this, but Inception does it best. However, Restless opens with videos and popcorn. We go directly from previously on to the credits to videos and popcorn. But instead of movie night with a TV screen, it's movie night in our core 4 characters' unconscious minds. So I love this. I love the idea of framing this as an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as experienced by the cast of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Interesting.
Because as we have mentioned already, like this is clearly, they're clearly not just in each other's dreams, but they are in each other's dreams.
Mm-hmm.
They collect information as they go along. I think Giles's dream explains that the best when he says, he sings,
Yes.
we have to warn Buffy she might be next.
Yeah.
Like they understand that something is coming after them individually.
And they're communicating with each other.
Yeah.
Because Giles can see, Xander's gaping wound, and then Willow references the fact that she is also in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little bit of that where we know there's some element of shared reality even within this dreamscape between the four of them, because they were just connected within Primeval, which is supposedly the inciting incident of this particular story.
Yeah, they were
yeah.
literally one consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We are led to believe. I mean, that's
Right.
something I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about that in our last episode. Like, what the hell actually goes on with that spell?
Right.
It's a very interesting idea that they join. I think the way it's explained is that they join consciousnesses.
Well, are they all inside? Are they all consciously inside of Buffy's body? Like they're all sharing that? Or are they just like experiencing her, loaning her their expertise, or like how all of that is actually working? I don't know.
I mean, she's the hand, right? So she's the physical manifestation of this power, but the power comes from the combined aspects of
all of them.
Willow, Xander, Giles, and Buffy together. And it does, because they speak as a we, and they speak with their voices overlapping. They may, I don't know. I understood that as she is the only one having any sort of physical experience of this, because that's the point, because that is her role. The body of the Slayer is kind of a big deal in a lot of ways, but their consciousness goes into her. Their consciousnesses join together and go into her, whatever that means.
Right.
So it makes sense that then there would be some like residual consciousness, like, bleed
Mind
through,
melding,
that you'd be like end up, you would, you, Willow, would end up with a little bit of Giles still in your...
I'd expect them to maybe finish each other's sentences, or something like that.
Yeah.
But I do like, though, that we have, one thing I do like about Restless conceptually is that they performed this spell and that magic has consequences, that they were pulling on, primeval forces that they did not entirely understand. And the idea that, that primeval force would then have exact a toll, right, for riding on that highway. I can see that. The specific source of the toll keeper, I guess, is not my favorite, but I kind of like that idea. And we visit that again, a couple of times, like when they bring Buffy back in season 6, and they have that demon that sort of hitchhiked along, and so there was a consequence to that magic, that there's consequence to big magic, that there's the idea of and Giles' whole, well, I said there would be dire consequences, or something like that.
Oh my
so
God.
there's something to that, which I do kind of appreciate conceptually. The way in which they chose to express that, I thought was lacking. All right, so Kelly, which one of the dreams is your favorite?
Oh God.
Do you have a favorite?
In terms of character development and vulnerability, I would have to say Xander. In terms of the one that delights me to watch, I have to say Giles. Because I'm sorry, Spike as a black and white photo tourist attraction and posing, like I will watch that fucking scene over and over and over again. And then
I love it.
Giles singing goddamn exposition and instructions.
I know, it's delightful.
try not to bleed on my couch. I just had it steam
cleaned.
And pulling his glasses off at exactly the point in the song where you where you would punctuate with a gesture, but also at exactly the point in the speech where he normally would take his glasses off and like rub the bridge of his nose.
Exactly. Did you notice that in Willow's dream, Giles was not wearing glasses because he doesn't see anything?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and he's also,
real nice.
I also love that in Willow's dream, he's a patriarchal asshat. So, because Harmony says he's searching for the word props, and Harmony says props, and he says no, and Riley says props, and he says yes. So when a boy says it, anyway. Yeah, I'm with Kelly. Xander's dream is my favorite of the dreams. Which I have, I guess, come full circle on this podcast because I'm a total, like, Xander apologist when it comes to Restless. I love Xander's dream so much. I love it. I love it for what it shows us about Xander, including a lot of things that we sort of suspected. Or
right,
sort
but
of
we didn't have any textual, real evidence of until this episode.
But also,
I like that too.
It feels so much like a dream. Like, I really am in it with him, the way he's always moving, but no matter what he does, he can't escape the basement. I love that all of the sets are connected, and it looks, in a couple of those cases, like that's a reality of the sets. I don't know.
It may well be. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but it really does look like some of those sets are maybe connected in that way.
Yeah. Like, didn't Giles go directly from the crypt into the bronze? And I'm like, I wonder if the back of Spike's crypt just leads into the bronze. I mean, why not? Right?
I kind of hope
they've only
it does.
got so much space. Yeah.
I kind of hope it does. But Xander's dream is really interesting to me because the people in his life all appear in his dream and they're kind of playing themselves, but also not really. They're also reflections of Xander's insecurity about his lack of forward motion, which of course is the theme of his dream.
Got to keep with the moving forward.
Yeah, he's got to keep moving forward, but he never actually goes anywhere. And he ends up back in the basement at the end with his father, who we've only heard about at this point.
Yeah.
His father comes down the stairs and attacks him, and that's
turns into the first Slayer and attacks him.
Well, but attacks him as his father.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got the 3 in the basement, and every time there's that pounding on the door, and so we all presume at this point, that it is whatever this monster is that we haven't clearly seen yet at this point, and then when the door opens and it's his father, that moment is such a gut check, because you realize that, like, there's a reality to Xander's experience that we have not addressed and that we won't actually address textually until Hell's Bells in season 6. But that his his home life is really dark and
more monstrous than anything else. Like, there's the monster in his dream is his father, and his attacker only appears as the first Slayer in that last frame when the person who attacks him is his father, and then as he's having his heart ripped out, he sees the first Slayer. It's really good and really intense, and it opens with this really, like, I think it's interesting that it includes Willow gasping, because of course we've seen her being choked, drained of life. We're not totally sure what's happening there.
Unable to breathe, having a little extended apnea. I'm not sure.
We start Xander's dream kind of sort of in waking life, but not really. Again, another little indication that this is all the same. Right. This is all the same dream space. And he says, Giles says that Apocalypse Now is overrated. And which I love. I love him saying that. They're watching this bizarro version of Apocalypse Now. Yeah. And according to Xander, it gets better. And then he says, I remember that it gets better. Which is so sad. Like, there's just something so sad about this thing that he loves. Like, he's so enthusiastic about Apocalypse Now. It's a gay romp. It was the feel-good movie of whatever year it was. But then, he's like confronted with the reality of this thing he loves. It's like not the reality, but like the dream reality. It's not that great.
I remember it being better. But also the dream reality shows this shot of this guy who's walking in this chroma keyed background. So he's walking on a treadmill. He's not actually going anywhere.
Yeah.
So with that whole forward motion thing, I think that's an interesting bit of metaphor there.
And Giles says it's about the journey. I get it now. It's about the journey. I don't know. I just love I love Xander's dream. I love him going upstairs and, Buffy offers to help him, or like, you don't need any help with that. He's going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
This like super kind of patronizing, like, on the one hand, it is sort of a joke you'd make with your friends, but they play it so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And his reaction is so serious.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's upstairs and he's so like torn about what's going on with Joyce, and I just have to say I have had those moments in a dream where I'm like, I'm like kind of into this, but also maybe not. Like, it's so wonderful, Xander being so aimless and kind of not aimless, but confused and like easily thrown off track, and then she tells him don't get lost as he's going down the hallway to the bathroom. So it's we hit that travel, motion, journey, theme really hard right out of the gate. It's so clearly, to me anyway, Xander's anxiety about his ability to do literally anything, like including go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an incredibly vulnerable position to be in.
Yes. And to have a bunch of initiative guys taking notes while you do it, I imagine would be even more.
Well, because Xander has that connection to like the idea of being a soldier, and like maybe I should have been in the maybe I would be better off in the military. But of course, at this point,
he does
our
have that
real
soldier background.
Yeah, but also that insecurity that we heard about in the Yoko Factor, that he was gonna, Spike plants that seed that, oh, your friends were saying you were gonna join the military. There's a moment, I don't remember if it's in the Yoko Factor or if it's in Primeval, where Xander is depressed in bed and says, maybe I should join the army.
Mm-hmm.
And
right. Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And Anya says, don't they make you get up really early in the morning? Which I love. But then that idea, like maybe I should join the army, is still in there because he's trying to do this mundane thing, go to the bathroom. But our most recent military force, the initiative, is there. So what would it mean? Like, what would it mean to arrive at your destination, in this case, the bathroom, and have it be the military, and have it be this place of intense structure and scrutiny that Xander wants but doesn't want, because he wants to be seen and known, which is what part of what the bit with Joyce is about, I think, because she says, like, I've learned about boys, which I just love. And he's like, she's seeing him and what he needs in this way that he's not getting elsewhere. So being seen and known is definitely a theme of Xander as well. And we're really, and I feel like I've said that before on this podcast, but here we get this visual representation of it with the exchange, going from the exchange with Joyce to the moment with the initiative guys in the bathroom, which I just love, again, for feeling very dreamlike. Xander's anxiety is really all over the place about like what role he wants to. not what role he wants to play, but what he wants to be seen and known for. Like, he wants to be noticed, but maybe not quite so intimately as with, dudes with clipboards while he's trying to pee.
Yeah. Right.
I love the fact that he, in his dream, is observing himself. So he's like watching himself at the park from his ice cream truck.
Yes.
And there's such a contrast of how like Xander is represented in the other dreams compared to how he's represented in his own. And I love the fact that he just highlights for us, we cannot control what we dream about. Like,
Yes.
I have woken up saying, what the fuck, brain?
Right.
Why
We
did
can't
you
control
do that?
we can't control what we dream about, which is always kind of the pass given when we talk about stories with dreams. But somebody specifically wrote everything in Xander's dream.
Yeah.
So to a
Joss
certain
Whedon
degree,
specifically wrote everything in Xander's dream.
Yeah, like the sexualization of Joyce doesn't really sit that well with me. I don't like it. It feels weird. And like I can understand Xander having a dream that maybe represents something about his insecurity about older. I don't know. But then we go straight from that, like not straight, but like then we go from that and eventually end up in the ice cream truck with a hypersexualized Tara and Willow in the back.
And it's the best thing ever.
I hate it so much.
I love that you're like I love that you're the one who hates that.
I know. No, I find that so interesting because I really do super, super hate it because it feels so objectifying. And I mean, there's the whole thing about, here we've got two women when they do a spell and I do a spell myself, which was from Willow's dream, but it's very, very branded Xander, right?
Yeah, that was the Xander, yes.
Objectifying of lesbians in general is something that doesn't sit that well with me. But on top of it, objectifying Willow. This is fucking Willow. Like, Willow is special. Xander knows her as a human, and to put her in this highly objectified space just felt incredibly gross to me.
Is she objectified, though?
It feels that way to me.
She's very active, though. She's not an object in that scene.
The two girls kissing are not an object for Xander to lust after?
I'll get there. Do you want me to get there?
No, you break it. Look, I'm just saying, like, I'm the straight lady here, so I back down. Like, I defer to your read, definitely.
I think it's interesting that you bounce so hard off of that, and I think that you're probably not the only one who bounces hard off of that. What do you think of that, Kelly?
Well, I thought it was interesting because, and I love your two opposing forces on this. I saw Willow as very empowered in that scene too. Like, she and Tara are doing their thing, not necessarily for him, but are kind of inviting him to, watch or maybe learn something. I don't know. But the thing that killed me was, I'm like, okay, so the camera cuts away when they're obviously kissing. And I was like, wait, Tara and Willow still haven't had an actual on-screen kiss? So, no, that doesn't happen until the body. And I was like, what the hell is up with that? Like, if you're gonna give me ice cream truck lesbians, like, melt the ice cream, goddammit. Like, do it right.
I love you so much. Well, do you want to know why?
Yes.
Other than I think it would be... Now, see, I think that would be intensely problematic if Willow and Tara's first on-screen kiss was...
Yes, I agree. I wouldn't want that to be the first. Yeah.
That would not be okay. I don't think. I mean, for my money. But... But can I break down this ice cream truck scene?
Yes, please.
We're just going to leap gaily over Xander in the sandbox, which is super, like, that's some super powerful shit. Again, with, Xander's version of Giles seeing Spike as a son.
Oh, yeah.
And
I love
Xander's
that.
kind of sour grapes about it. Like, I used to be into that, but now I have other stuff going on, or whatever it is that he says.
Yeah.
Buffy saying, I'm way ahead of you, big brother.
Yeah.
And then he says brother, and we hold recognition for an uncomfortable amount of time. And it makes me squeal. But I love, Kelly mentioned it already, ice cream truck Xander watching other Xander, talk to Buffy in the sandbox really speaks to this like split dream identity that like you can be both in a dream and watching the dream at the same time.
Yeah, I love that moment.
Like
that was really cool.
That feels really like, yes, like that makes me nod with recognition because I think I've had that experience in a dream. And of course, then he climbs into the front of the ice cream truck and Anya says, "Do you know where you're going?" So here we go with this, like, where this idea of where is Xander going? Buffy has said she's ahead of him. And then there are these lesbians in the back of the ice cream truck that just delight me to no end. Dream Willow says, "I'm way ahead of you," as she's playing with Tara in the back of this ice cream truck. So in the Yoko factor, we get Xander's surprise, right? They're having this big fight. Willow says to Buffy, "You can't handle the fact that Tara's my girlfriend." And Xander says, "Tara's your girlfriend?" And like clearly like had never crossed his mind because of course he's the last to know. And I love that this surprise comes back in this idea of Willow being ahead of him relationship wise. Willow and Tara are clearly better suited to each other than Xander and Anya are. I mean, particularly in this dream sequence. I mean, his demon is talking about going back to vengeance. And if she does that, Xander might be in trouble. You know, she has hobbies and interests outside of him, whereas Willow and Tara, do spells and then they do spells together. And that in Xander's understanding of relationship is ahead of where he is. So what I love most about this is that Willow and Tara look like Robert Palmer backup dancers.
Yes, they do.
They look so like it's almost ghoulish the way that they are a parody of sexiness. I don't think they're meant to look sexy. I think they're meant to look like a caricature.
So instead of being the thing, they're mocking this thing.
They are. I don't know that they're it's so heightened as to be ridiculous, but it tracks for me really well for Xander specifically, because Xander, I mean, we know that Xander's taste in imagery of women is very specific because Xander is Joss Whedon. You guys, we all know this, right? Like, and the Robert Palmer backup dancers are made up to look like, oh no, I'm going to lose it. I need to do a Google. The Nagel woman, the famous Playboy artist, anyway, whatever. So, but this makeup and costuming is clearly a caricature. And what I love is that we see Xander's reaction to the two of them, not what they're doing to each other. And once again, we hold for recognition for a really uncomfortably long time, which just makes me so happy in my heart. Because it's a beautiful twist on the idea of the male gaze, which I've talked about before on this podcast. Here, in the ice cream truck, instead of men acting and women appearing, we have women acting on each other and a man trying desperately to keep up. I also appreciate that we don't see what Willow is doing to Tara because she says, "Watch this," and then he does. But we're in Xander's unconscious mind, and Xander doesn't know what he thinks two women do together.
All right. Xander at this age hasn't looked into that quite a bit.
No,
I mean,
well, you mentioned Willow, that like, oh, this is icky because it's Willow specifically. And I think I think it's meaningful because it's Willow specifically. Like, it's one thing to, look at a Playboy centerfold where two naked women have their arms around each other. And it's another thing to think about your friend who you've known since she was 5 and you were 5 as having a girlfriend, and like, what does that even mean? Like, what even, but how do you do a spell together? What do you even do when you do a spell together? I just enjoy it. Yeah. I enjoy it as a moment of anxiety for Xander, because I don't see it as a turn on. I don't see him being like, yeah, 2 women in the back of the ice cream truck.
Oh, see, that's exactly what I see. But I'm really glad that you don't. I'm glad that there may be something more there that I'm not picking up, because that's what I see, and it irritates me every time.
But his face looks so shocked, and so like he looks uncomfortable. And then later when he talks to Snyder about, I'm supposed to meet Buffy, or I'm supposed to meet Tara and Willow, and maybe Buffy's mom. Like, he's kind of uncomfortable about it. Like, he's really awkward in that scene with Joyce. Yeah. Like, he's trying to be cool, but he's obviously not cool.
Well, and everywhere in Xander's dream, even though it's his dream and they're, quote unquote, his spaces, he doesn't belong. Right. So when he's at Buffy's house, he's thrown into this situation with Joyce that he knows, like, you can feel how uncomfortable he is. He knows it's not quite right. He can't even relax and go to the bathroom without being judged. I mean, there's a clipboard in there, for crying out loud. And, he's at the playground being called, brother in this way that shocks him. He's watching, Spike and Giles, and Giles is training Spike as the Watcher and not Xander. And I think Spike is wearing the outfit that he wears in Tabula Rasa.
I was wondering about that, because it looks a lot like that same outfit.
Yep. And so, like, Spike doesn't belong in that Watcher conversation. And then, Tara and Willow are very comfortable together in the back of the ice cream truck, and he doesn't really belong there either. Anya gives him her blessing to go join them, and she's talking about moving on to go back to Vengeance. He doesn't really belong with her. And then when he goes to the Apocalypse Now, with Snyder, who, like, I saw as like a precursor to what we get with Xander's father, like this other male authority figure.
Yeah.
And he's like, where are you from?
Does not approve of him. Yeah.
Right. He says, where are you from, Harris? And he says, well, the basement mostly. And then it's constantly just back to that basement, because that's where he does not want to be, but that's the only place he thinks he belongs.
It's so sad.
It's so sad, it's so sad. But I do love that he has, like, grown enough to stand up to Snyder, and
literally, literally.
But I never got the chance to tell you how glad I was you got eaten by a snake. Makes me laugh.
I know that's
every
a great line.
Damn time. It's so good.
It's a great line. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I like all the stuff in Xander's dream except for the stuff with women, including that moment where Buffy says, "Way ahead of you, big brother," and he says, "Brother," like he's still looking for something, more romantic or sexual with Buffy. And the fact that out of all of these, and you know how I feel about Anya, out of all of these women that he's sexualizing, the one that he does not look on that way is his girlfriend, and then she just says, yes, sure, fine, go, pursue all the other women. And also while they're in, one of the things I did like is that while they're in the truck is also not going anywhere. It's one of those chroma keyed backgrounds, of just like, running through. So he's not moving anywhere with that. So I do like all of that. I don't like Xander with Anya. I don't like the way that he treats Anya. I don't like the way that he thinks about Anya. So the fact that in this dream where he's viewing all of these women as somehow his sexual territory, which is how I read it. I like that you guys don't read it that way. That's how I read it. It completely ignores Anya and whatever her needs might be in that. And I know it's his dream and everything, but that's where his mind is at. He doesn't think of her.
And so Anya has learned how to drive by gesturing emphatically.
So great.
I love that. She's so cute.
Well, I saw some similarities, I guess, between Willow and Xander, just in terms of how, relationships or sexuality can tap into vulnerability in our dreams because, Willow, and I agree completely with Noelle. I think Joss Whedon has a lot more hang-ups about Willow's lesbian self than Willow does. But it was interesting to me that when she's back in front of that classroom, doing her book report, and I think wearing the same dress that she wore in Welcome to the Hellmouth.
I think it was.
That Oz is very flirty with Tara, and Tara is into it. So it's not overly sexual, but it is very intimate. It kind of almost felt like a similar vulnerability thread to me. But again, that may be a very, very, very generous reading.
Yeah.
No, I like it.
My relationship is not secure theme seems to be in both Willow and Xander's dreams. I love the shift in Tara in Willow's dream. I love that she goes from this like sort of benevolent, ethereal, almost like fae creature who's like, the play has already started. That's not the point. She's
the oracle throughout.
Yes. But I love then that when Willow is in that moment of, being stripped of her supposed costume and having to give this book report, that Tara, and give it up. Like, let's give it up for Amber Benson once again with that smirk.
Oh, yeah.
That like, oh, she just looks so wicked all of a sudden with Oz, whispering in her ear, and you're, oh, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. But the idea that like maybe your relationship isn't all that you think it is or wish it were, then I think comes back with Xander and Anya. Like part of the reason that Anya is not this like seductive presence in Xander's dream, I think, is that there is that anxiety about how connected is their relationship really for Xander.
Yeah.
But
and that fear, right, of like, oh, if my partner sees this about me, I will lose them. Which I think echoes through both of their dreams so much. But in terms of like just beautiful heat on screen, can we talk about Willow painting Tara's back?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
We have to.
When I think of Restless, that's what I think of, and I love it, and I love it, and I don't care if it has any narrative meaning. I don't care. I just want to watch it all day long.
It's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is really beautiful.
It's Sappho, right? We all know this at this point, that she's painting Sappho's Ode to Aphrodite in the original Greek, which just is, oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
So good. And I love Tara, like her role in these dreams, right? Because she tells Willow, you don't know everything about me. And all Willow is concerned about is, have you told me your real name? Which is such great foreshadowing for family when we get there in season 5.
Yeah.
But, you call Tara the Oracle, and I think that's exactly right. And I love how she's represented in Buffy's dreams, right? So, because it feels like Buffy trusts her, and looks to her for knowledge. And we know in a lot of ways, Tara seems to know and see things that other people just don't know, and see. And, Tara's the one that foreshadows Dawn. She tells Buffy, you think you know what's to come, what you are, you haven't even begun. And like, I love Tara in this wise elder kind of ethereal role, just all the way through. I mean, Amber Benson is just amazing.
She really is.
Yes. I want to get into Willow's dream and talk about all of the things there. But just to wrap up with Xander's dream real quick. We talked about it a little bit, but of course the monster at the top of the stairs is Xander's father. And I just, the thing that he says right before he rips out Xander's heart is, the line ends here with us and you're not going to change that. You haven't the heart. And then rips his heart out, which, he is the heart. This is his role in the spell. I get it. But ouch. Like, wow. Like, you don't have the heart to move past this basement and this abusive family and everything it represents is just...
Well, the thing that's really interesting about Xander's dream is it is the only one, I think, in which there is a lot of power coming from a source outside of this core group. That there is a real psychological trauma in Xander that we don't recognize and we don't see, you know, and he shows up in this. And we've had like little references, but we don't really get a vision of not just his home life, but what his home life has done to him. You know, I mean, Giles is dreaming about Buffy and Buffy's his kid. You know, Willow is dreaming about everybody, and it's Oz and it's Xander and it's, you know, Tara. It's all major cast members, you know. We get Olivia a little bit with Giles, and that's going to be really interesting too, because there's a powerful moment with her.
Oh God, I love it.
But yeah, but like Xander, you know, we've got, because all of this is, you know, supposedly something that's brought on. It's a shared dreamscape. It's an experience with this, you know, first Slayer that's going around killing everybody, which we will talk about. But Xander has this unbelievably powerful, yet just for a moment, you know, the monster at the top of the stairs in the basement is not the Slayer, it's his dad, you know. And the dad is the one that lunges at him. The dad is the one that says you don't have heart. The dad is the one that is you know, coming after him and terrifying him. And that, I think, is incredibly powerful and something that's really easy to like not register as much because it's not a major character, it's not a major storyline, it's not something we ever talk about.
Yeah, Xander's home life is by and large behind the scenes or in the subtext or in the barely there text. There will be a line or two that gives you a sense of Xander's home life. And I mean, you really see, I feel like we're really seeing Joss Whedon's affection for Xander in this dream. And maybe, I mean, and maybe that's why I love Xander's dream so much, is that Joss Whedon clearly loves Xander and has put that connection into this, you know, this like little story within a story, really.
Right.
That is one thing that I don't think we have notes about, but the problem of these dreams sort of being stories within a story, but not really. But anyway, I was finishing up with Joss Whedon's affection for Xander. And I mean, Xander is Joss's guy. Like, we know this. And it's really here in this episode, I think, in a way that for me works really powerfully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it really does. And sometimes I think that the extra textual idea of Joss and Xander being doppelgangers, Xander being a fictional self-insertion for Joss Whedon, I think there's like some argument for that, you know, and I think that we've seen a fair bit of it. And I think that it gives me kind of an uncomfortable, or I feel sometimes like I get an uncomfortable vision into Joss Whedon's psychology through Xander, which can sometimes be a little bit disturbing because I try to keep that separated, you know, because I don't know Joss Whedon. I don't know anything about Joss Whedon, but man, there's feels like Xander is a confessional of some sort, a fictional confessional for Joss Whedon, and for the way that he thinks, which I think is really interesting.
Isn't that kind of what writers do? Like, isn't that kind of the fun of being a writer?
That you are all of your characters to a certain degree. Yeah, to a certain degree, definitely. But I mean, there's also an entire team of writers building all of these characters together. But Xander feels very, very Jossy. You know, has a big ode to Whedon on him.
Yeah. So then, what do we make? Like, so if Xander is Whedon and very much Whedon in this story, in this episode, what the fuck do we do about Buffy and Giles and being tied for being the actual fucking worst? I mean, between Giles' patriarchal bullshit and Buffy's racism, the whole thing makes me so stabby. I just want to
Buffy's-
lop the episode off after Xander's dream. I'm like, can we just be done? Like,
Yeah, it gets real
Oh!
bad. It gets real bad.
so bad.
So let's talk a little bit. We haven't spent much time on Giles's dream, so let's talk a little bit about Giles's dream. Although, actually, are we done talking about Willow? Because Willow's stuff is probably like my favorite.
is it? What do you love about Willow's stuff?
Okay, I love Willow's. I love the opening with Tara, and I think like as far as like the whole narrative value, like I gave up on Restless having a strong narrative from the beginning. So this is just I've
So
given up on that.
we're not gonna
I'm
address
just
it
gonna-
because it's not there.
I'm just gonna enjoy. No, there's no point in me, going off on that. Although, like, there is a little bit of that later when we come to the first Slayer stuff. Because anyway, but I love her painting, on Tara's back. I love Tara as Oracle. I love Willow's vision of the play. I love Riley as Cowboy Guy. I love
Yes.
Buffy's whole speech. You men with your sails. I love that whole thing. I think that's adorable. We've got Harmony, which I absolutely love. I love Harmony as a vampire trying to bite on Giles. I love Giles. I don't love Giles' patriarchal bullshit, but I love that we get a clear representation of, yes, exactly, this is the shit I'm talking about, with Harmony saying props and Giles saying no, and then Riley says props and he says yes, that kind of thing is a real experience, and I feel very strongly that a woman put that line in. But I think that all of this stuff is, I really enjoy like Willow's whole dream and that whole experience, and there's a lot of fun with the backstage. I love Giles doing the big speech beforehand. I love that he doesn't have his glasses because he doesn't see, all of that kind of stuff I really, really like in Willow's dream, and I think it's very fun. We do play a little bit on this expectation with the everyone knows about you, the real you. They're going to see what you are. That we're playing on this idea of an internalized homophobia, when in actuality it's an internalized nerdophobia, I guess. That it's not really about her sexuality, but it's about her being a nerd. Or is the nerd thing a stand-in for her being weird or feeling weird and insecure about her sexuality? I don't know.
I saw it more. Okay, so first of all, I love Willow wanting drama class to be done right. Like,
yes,
yes,
exactly.
you go to class and rehearse and learn your lines before you put on a production. Like, follow the rules of the syllabus. God damn it! Like,
Yes.
I really, really love
Yes.
that. But I think that whole, like, they're gonna see you, and if they see you, they're gonna punish you. That maybe we're supposed to read that as homophobia or nerdophobia,
Right.
but I read it as magic and mundane. So like Willow has stepped into this role as witch, right? And she just performed like this big spell that like merged them all into Super Slayer. And so like once you've done that, like you have demonstrated power in a certain arena.
Yes.
You can't take it back. But like then imposter syndrome sets in, right? Never good enough. Who do you think you are? Like maybe that was a fluke, or like that's not really you, or like you can't own that power. So it was more putting her back. Like I didn't read it so much. I mean, there's relationship stuff there. Oz says, I've been here forever. And I think that means like in Willow's heart.
Yeah.
And not so much it's not really the outfit or the, being a nerd versus not being a nerd, but Willow before that true magical self that is now really part of her and that power that she has, and going back to the time before she had it and seeing herself the way I would imagine she would think Tara would see her, where magic is a part of who they are together. And if Willow didn't have that, then that would be like a huge vulnerability point for her. So that was kind of how I was reading that. But
Okay.
No, I like it.
I just had a ping of recognition as you were speaking about the magic and the mundane, Kelly, because I didn't really understand why the clothing from Welcome to the Hellmouth would come up and like what was going on there, because Willow to me never seemed to have hang-ups about being a nerd. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm so ashamed that I'm a nerd, or my clothes aren't cool, or whatever. It was much more about like she she didn't love that Cordelia was bullying her, but she
Right.
also kind of accepted it. And I think that it's not so much about nerdiness or uncoolness or whatever as it is about being isolated and being detached from any sort of community, because that was what the clothing represented, certainly way back in
Right.
the beginning of, way back in season 1, Willow's nerdiness was what supposedly was keeping her from having this group of friends, the way that Cordelia always had a
Right.
group of friends following her around. So the outfit becomes not so much about quote unquote nerdiness, whatever that means, right? That's just the search
Right.
for knowledge, somebody who's into knowledge. It's not so much about her nerdiness and her insecurity about that as it is about her fear of being alone and separated from her friends again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does
I
that-
like that.
Does that make sense? Like, it's not about,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. And then, of course, her book report is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is a little Christian allegory for the baby witch. I don't know. I just kind of like, that's
For the Jewish baby witch, yes.
yeah,
the
the
little Christian
Jewish
allegory.
baby witch.
Yes.
Well, and you know what?
Okay.
That's really interesting, though, when you think about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and you think about how Willow is represented in Xander's dream, because, that is the series that sends Susan to hell for wearing lipstick and pantyhose. So I'm just saying. It kind
You're
of
just saying, yeah.
Do you think that anybody paid attention to the fact that it was a Christian allegory, or that a woman went to hell for wearing pantyhose and lipstick,
or that it's
just picked it
appropriate
because
for
it has
a
the word witch in
fifth
it?
grader's book report and not a high school
Yeah.
student, but whatever.
I think it just has the word witch in it, and so they're like, okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of feel like maybe we're reading a little bit more in there. All right, so Giles's dream. I know Noelle's gonna flip a table. I'm gonna let you flip a table in just a minute. I'm gonna give you the whole stage. I'll set the table up for you. But Giles's dream starts with this moment that is reminiscent of Helpless, right? When he's sort of hypnotizing Buffy. And the incredible amount of guilt I think that he probably still and always will feel about that betrayal, I feel like is an interesting place to start this. And then we go into this, they're at this street fair and she's his daughter and they're holding hands. And then we've got Olivia there pushing a baby stroller. And we go straight from, he references Buffy and says blood of the lamb and all that, that she is the sacrifice, right? And there is he is representative of this Watcher patriarchy, which as we go further, through Buffy all the way through to season 7, where we find out what the original Watchers did to the original Slayer, the Watchers are fucking evil, and they do run through Slayers like Kleenex, without any real consideration for the Slayers themselves as humans, So I read this as him feeling like the guilt of what it means to be a Watcher. And then we've got Spike vying for his attention with his tourist trap, picture thing, which I absolutely
He sold
love.
himself as an attraction. I love
And
it.
he's in black and white during those shots are all in black and white, which I think is really, really fun. Then we have Giles going through into Spike's crypt, and there is, or I guess it's about the same time, and Olivia is sitting there next to an empty stroller just weeping, right? And it's, again, one of these background details that I think it's easy to not notice that much. I mean, she's sitting there in shadow, next to a black stroller that you can barely see the way that she's lit, and just weeping over this thing. And Giles is completely ignoring her, which I find this whole thing seems to be about Giles's guilt, about everything. And then, of course, Willow says, "Do you know this is your fault?"
Yeah.
when he walks in, and he gets into the bronze and then starts his song and talks with them. And so I find Giles's dream just to be this complete meditation on his guilt, his culpability, And I find that really kind of interesting. It's not what I would have expected from Giles, but yet that I think is definitely a part of his character. All right, so Noelle,
Yes.
would you like to flip a table on Giles?
Well, I just read I read no guilt. I read no remorse from him. Giles's dream to me, Giles's dream suggests to me that his unconscious mind sees in it.
It's littered with his bad
I'm like
deeds.
so angry. I can't even.
No, I get it.
Giles's unconscious suggests that he sees himself as a patriarch in all senses of the word. He is what is it that he said? Like, he's hypnotizing her at the beginning, and I don't see
this
that.
This is the way that men and women have behaved since the beginning of time. Something like that.
Yeah, that line was creepy coming from Giles to Buffy.
It's creepy. They're like, he's standing, she's sitting there in his empty house. He's got the pocket watch doing the hypnotist trick. It's so creepy. It speaks so strongly to me to the abuse of power in the Watcher Slayer relationship, in the teacher, like it's like a bad teacher moment. It's like the imbalance of power in a teacher student relationship. And then we go directly from that to Giles' dream vision of Buffy as a literal child. Like, she is a child, and he is so irritated with her about every fucking thing. I have no time for it. I have no time for it.
I get it. But I feel like because we're in Giles's POV, like the fact that he is seeing all of these things, that he is the one who is presenting all of these things, it feels like a guilt and shame parade for me, for Giles. Because if he wasn't feeling guilt, if he wasn't feeling shame, this isn't what he would show himself. Like, he wouldn't even see any of that stuff.
Yeah, I saw it differently. So because I do think that Giles has guilt, but I saw it as someone trying to fit himself into the role of a patriarch and not wanting to, and subconsciously knowing that it was wrong. So like that super creepy hypnotizing thing cuts very quickly, almost like his subconscious says, no, this is not how we think about Buffy, or this is how you were trained to think about your Slayer, but you know it's wrong. And it's like very, like, we're done with that, and we don't go back to that at all. And then when he has her, like, at that fair, that festival, and she's this little child, and he is so brash with her, you know, and so impatient, and, you know, I don't have any treats. Like, what am I supposed to do? She wants this pat on the head, and because he wants to be her dad, but he is her watcher. And I think he feels deeply conflicted about that. And, you know, we see this, he's very torn with Olivia. You know, Olivia's there with the stroller. She's there in the dream, but he has no time for her because he has no time for his own life. He has no space for, like, his own love interest because he is a watcher, where they're both part of this very corrupt system that he's just starting to see. Like, he's just starting to understand how evil his role is. And that's conflicting with his identity, where he used to think that being a watcher was a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because he tells that first Slayer, I can defeat you with my intellect. I can cripple you with my thoughts. Of course you underestimate me. You never had a watcher. But the thing is, he can't. He can't actually do any of that. And he knows it. So, like, I did feel that he was, I think it was almost like his dream affirming the things he knows. And all of that is in conflict with what he was taught.
Because there is that lack of conviction when he's saying, like, he's saying the words about, you know, I can defeat you with my thoughts. You know, I know who you are and how I can defeat you. But he doesn't have any real. There's not a lot of oomph behind that.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I'm actually flashing to the end of Moana when Moana confronts Te Kā, the lava monster, and she says, I know your name. They have stolen the heart from inside you, but this does not define you.
Oh.
And I'm like, that is what is missing in the interaction between Giles, or really anyone, and this first Slayer is, it's not I know you and I know how to defeat you. It's I know you and I'm sorry for what happened to you.
Yeah.
Like, that is what, because that's, like, that moment when he's like, he is, oh God, it's so gross. Like, the I can defeat you with my thoughts. It's like, you really can't, though. Like, you really can't.
But yeah, this whole thing with the way that the first Slayer is treated, that is my table flipping for Restless. That is where I get deep into table flipping. But before we get there, let's start with Buffy's dream, because the beginning of Buffy's dream, up until we have interaction with the first Slayer, has some interesting things. We have this oracle moment from Tara. You think you know what's to come, what you are. You haven't even begun. And be back before dawn, right? Which I think is really nice, because, of course, we are going to get dawn coming in season 5. There's this moment with Joyce in the wall, right? Where she's like, I really don't think you should be in the wall. And then Joyce says, well, maybe you can break it down. And Buffy just leaves her there.
That is a fascinating interaction.
It's such a quick moment. And again, like, the stuff that I think that speaks really deeply, Xander's father, Olivia crying with the stroller,
which we didn't really talk about. But does she look pregnant to anyone else? Does Olivia look pregnant?
Didn't. They have her wearing such dark clothes. Like, you can't really even see her. She's so faded into the background.
I read her as pregnant. I read her as, like, the Empress in mourning.
Oh.
In that. But again, like, maybe.
I wonder if she was pregnant.
Maybe
or
that's
if she wanted a baby. And
maybe that's a trick of the light. Maybe the actress was pregnant. Maybe I'm seeing something and reading it as pregnancy that it's not. But okay. I just wanted to see if anyone else had seen Olivia as pregnant.
I didn't see it. I was so focused on the empty baby stroller.
Who's the stroller for? Her baby or for Buffy?
I don't know. And of course, is she crying over the loss that we're going to get of Buffy at the end of season 5? Is that a prophetic thing? But it's also like, it felt to me in Giles's dream with Olivia that Olivia was, because Olivia, for the 35 seconds that we actually get of her throughout the run of season 4, seems pretty awesome. Like, I like her a lot.
Rad.
She would be really, really great.
Where's the spin-off show about Olivia?
Yeah, but why we didn't do more with her?
Maybe she's crying for the loss of childhood for every Slayer. Because that, they're girls. These are girls.
Oh, shit. And of course we do race really poorly on this show, but of course she is a black woman and our first Slayer is a black woman.
A black woman who is the only, like, character in this whole thing that has any empathy for the other black women here. Yeah. That reads, that tracks.
Yeah.
That fucking tracks.
Oh, she's weeping. She's weeping for the loss of the first Slayer. I just had
somebody should
that.
be. Somebody fucking should be. Okay, that's my table flip. Let me hang on with that for a minute. And let's finish Buffy's dream before I go full.
This is the problem. We get
before
on a
I go
thing
full
and then...
table flippy. I'm telling you, because it bothers me so much.
Yeah, and I could see Olivia being the one crying for that first Slayer in the dark where no one else is paying attention.
And nobody pays any attention.
But and I have table flipping with Buffy's dream too. But what I liked about Buffy's dream is that she is the dreamer within a dream. So, like, Buffy falls through 2 layers of dreaming, and then at the end she has to wake herself up twice.
Yes.
Which is like that. There is that deep connection with Slayers and dreaming. And she's got that callback to a previous dream. Faith and I just made that bed. So I really liked the levels of that. I was very curious about Anya being the person in the other dorm bed. Anya's very vulnerable in that bed. So Buffy's most intimate, like, bedroom conversations here are first with Anya and then with Tara, who are 2 characters that we later lose. Which I just thought was so interesting. And Buffy knows that her friends are in danger, but she leaves Joyce on the wall. And then when she walks into the initiative, Riley says, "Hey there, killer." And,
Yeah.
you know, and she's like, we're not demons. And Adam says, oh, is that a fact? And so, like, I think just as Giles is starting to understand, like, the evilness of the Watchers, that Buffy is starting to question the source of the Slayer. And, like, is there something demonic there? And maybe that is why she's so harsh to the first Slayer. Other than, you know, white feminist patriarchal bullshit, which I will let y'all flip tables on because it just pisses me off to no end. But
no, it's so awful.
She has to cover her face before she has that confrontation. Like, she has to put on this mask or, like, hide. So, like, maybe because she is afraid of what that first Slayer might actually tell her, that she, you know, rebukes and diminishes her and dismisses her. So, like, I kind of saw, you know, I saw a lot of that, but then it just made me so mad I didn't care anymore.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to table flip? Was there anything else? We did have a thing about names, though, that I thought was interesting with Riley and with Adam, where Riley says we've got a lot of important work to do, a lot of filing, giving things names, you know, and then they go off when there's danger. They go off to make a pillow fort, and the lack of actual, you know, effectiveness while having the power to name things. I think that names are hugely important. Giving something a name and having the ability, the person who names something defines it, right? And so these two, you know, white men in positions of power, right, are essentially ineffectual. They go off and they make pillow forts when there's actual fighting to do. And yet they have the power to name things. They have the power to define what is what.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting.
Yeah, and the first Slayer doesn't have a name. You know, Tara and Willow are trying to find Miss Kitty Fantastico's real name, which I don't know why that can't just be Miss Kitty Fantastico.
I think that's a great name.
You know, and Willow asks,
cat name ever.
Right? And Willow asks Tara, have you told me your real name? So, like, I think that, but naming is also defining, right? And we haven't yet defined what a Slayer is.
Killer, right?
Killer.
It's Riley who says killer.
That's what, I love Dream Riley calling Buffy killer. It feels very Faith to me. Like, it feels like something Faith would say, like, hey, killer. And there's that fantastic shot. Oh, I forget what leads into it, what line leads into it, but he says, we're the government. Yeah. And there's this shot from underneath the glass table up, you know, through the table at the gun that's pointing at Buffy.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's a visual reference to something that some movie I haven't seen. Because it's probably a manly men doing manly things movie that I just would never watch.
Very referential. Yes, exactly.
But that shot feels very much like it is from something. And
it's a deliberate call.
Yeah. And it's creepy and unsettling. But I love that Buffy's unconscious sense of the initiative and how effective they are is they build pillow forts.
Yes.
It really says, like, this week in Men, Willow's unconscious and Buffy's unconscious have a really good sense of Riley. I think.
Yes, they do. I get to be Cowboy Guy.
So I get to be Cowboy Guy. And
I get to be Cowboy Guy.
Baby, we're the government. It's what we do.
Oh, they're planning world domination.
Shit.
Right. Aren't they planning world domination?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And while they get the power to freaking name things, which, you know, drives me crazy.
But naming is really interesting. Naming is really, really interesting.
Naming is power. Naming defines narrative. Naming is the first step in narrative. And it is incredibly powerful. So the fact that they have that power and yet no real idea of what they're doing is very irritating. All right, I'm going to put my hands on the table. Y'all can hop in whenever you want to help me flip. But all right, so we've got the first Slayer, right? And I think the way that the first Slayer is represented in this is probably my biggest problem, aside from the fact that I just generally don't like dreams. But here we got the first Slayer, right? We're going to find out later that she was given her power when men in her tribe forced her to be raped by the essence of demons. So the original Watchers forced the original Slayer to be raped by demons, and then that's how she got her power. And then they used her over and over and over again. You know, when she died, the next one, the next one, the next one, to kill all the demons for them. so that they wouldn't have to. So she's followed by this long line of women, young girls who are forced into violent and early deaths by the men who hide behind them and their power. And so her choice, when wakened by whatever this, mind meldy spell is to kill Buffy and her friends. I could see her going after Giles. I could absolutely, had this been about the first Slayer wanting to kill Giles and Giles having to face the long line of horrible that was that patriarchal bullshit from the Watchers, I'd be much more into this, than the way that it is, because she's going after Buffy, she's going after Willow, she's going after Xander, when we have this Black woman, right, who is represented and physically presented as primal, as almost animalistic in her movements. And then we have a white woman speak for her in Tara, right? And then we have Buffy saying, let her speak for herself. That's what's done in polite circles. And then she comes in with, I have no speech, no name. I live in the action of death, the blood cry, the penetrating wound. I am destruction. I am absolute alone, right? All of that is, of course she has a name. Of course she has a name. She should be, this character should be making us recognize the brutality of this whole idea of these young women slayers, even if at this point we don't know the origin of that power, the horrible, violating origin of that power. We know that these young girls are in succession, being made to kill, made to live violently, and then die a young death, a young, violent, painful death, And then to have Buffy treat her with no respect, I walk, I sleep, I shop, I sneeze. If ever there was anything more white feminist than the way that Buffy speaks to this woman, this Slayer with whom she should be feeling an essential sisterhood. You are not the source of me.
You are not the source of me is so...
It's so fucking
It's
dismissive.
so back-ass words. And you say white feminism, but is there even feminism here? This is just white supremacy. Oh, this is just...
Yeah, I guess the white feminism to me comes in the end when she says, oh, and by the way, think about the way you do your hair.
Right,
and how you want
that's
to be
when I flipped the table.
That's where there's white feminism.
Oh my God, I was so
the rest of it is just
plain
old classic white supremacy. But when women do this to women, when women allow the supremacies that give them some hold on to some sort of power to take down other women, that hurts. It hurts to watch it. It hurts to see it. It hurts to see Buffy, our hero, right? Our paragon of what is essentially good and right, within the text, treating this woman this way. This woman to whom she owes her power, this woman whose identity, we just strip from her. She has a fucking name and we should have heard it. We should have heard it in this, and she should have been able to say it.
It's interesting to me that they say that, because in the spell, in Primeval, Willow invokes Sinea, or daughter, is it Daughters of Sinea? Now I want to look it up again. But it's a cool series of words that Willow gives us in this spell that sounds very... The spell sounds like it's done right, but Giles says at the end of Restless, somehow our joining with Buffy and invoking the essence of the Slayer's power was an affront to the source of that power. And I'm like, yeah, you should have thought that through a little bit.
Right. And her going after Giles as the representation of the Watchers. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. It does make sense to me that she would go after Buffy and her friends, that how do I want to say this? The source of the power right, is pain and trauma and isolation. So bringing in any sort of friendship or support would presumably be an affront to that power, maybe. Not that, not that it should be that way, but this idea that, like, basically I feel like the spirit of the First Slayer is angry because Buffy has this opportunity to experience community that she, as the First Slayer,
that she
in
was
pain
denied.
and isolation would never have. It's is that...
I mean, I guess, but that paints her as jealous and looking to deny
envious and
something
looking
that
to
she
deny
would have wanted.
But also, but also that like, I mean, there's the white feminism, right? That like, oh, I can't understand. Like, I, as a white person, why would a black woman be angry with me? Why would a black person want to hurt me? That kind of like, I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't, I didn't enslave anyone. Like, that's the kind of rhetoric that gets us into a lot of trouble, because it's not. I don't know. Like, I don't want to speak about, I wonder how this looks to black women specifically watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, I really wish that we had done our due diligence and gotten some, black women who are clearly, out there doing wonderful, amazing scholarship on these properties that we love, to weigh in on this character, because she is fascinating to me. And the idea, especially the idea that someone who is treated with so little care and compassion, and who is made to be a shield, like a dangerous shield for the men who enable her suffering, that
but we bring her in, making her the angry black woman. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing. Like, because I don't see Buffy, and I'm certainly not saying, oh, I didn't do this, and so then you shouldn't be mad at me, that she shouldn't be mad at Buffy, except that, like, the things that happened to her and her experience were brought on by men, by these watchers. And the fact that she would be mad at Buffy because Buffy has something that she doesn't have puts us in a position where we are looking at we're diving into this angry black woman as though she's just jealous, she's just envious or whatever, as opposed to that there's real reasons for complaint here that go beyond, you have something that I didn't have, so I don't know, like, I feel like there's a lot in that are there's a lot in this that just, it feels like it's such an accurate kind of representation of the ways in which these complaints are often ignored. Especially when the fucking cheese man comes in the second the First Slayer starts to speak with her own voice and steps in on her.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I was wondering if Willow could have changed the tone of those interactions with the Slayer in her dream. So the dreams hit Willow first, I'm presuming, because she's the one who cast the spell, right? She was the voice that evoked this spirit. And her reaction to that First Slayer, the first time she sees her, senses her in the background of her dream, is fear. She doesn't approach her. So if Willow had seen her, I mean, they all intuitively know who she is. They say the spirit of the First Slayer tried to kill us in our dreams. They know who she is. If Willow had approached her and said, have I offended you? Did this spell hurt you? I'm sorry if that's the case. What are you here? Do you have a message? Can we help you? Like, would that have shifted the Slayer's interaction with everyone? And I don't know, but I think that there's a possibility of how are you reacting to how you're being treated in that dream space? And they expect violence from her, and so she delivers violence. And I don't know that necessarily had to be the case.
It's a problem. I find it really, really upsetting.
Oh, yeah.
And when
too.
Buffy says, you're going to have to get over the whole primal power thing, you're not the source of me, in terms of hair care, you're going to want to say what kind of impression am I making in the workplace.
It was so wrong.
That is some racist bullshit right there.
Yeah, and so it feels, this last part feels so representative of, I mean, to have a white man with fucking cheese on his head and no relevance to anything step on her the moment she speaks for herself, feels like such an accurate representation.
That's so accurate. That's exactly what happens.
And yet, I think, like, not an intentional look at that,
Right.
but it is exactly a representation of that. And yeah, it's it's really table flippy. It's an upsetting thing to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And I appreciate the concept, if not the execution of acknowledging that this is a dream and I'm waking up. Like Buffy, the increasing lucidity of these dreams is interesting, right? Because Willow is clearly just in a dream. Willow has very little agency in her dream.
Yes.
Xander has some. He kind of understands that he has this goal of getting out of the basement, and he is able to literally stand up to Snyder, and in doing so ends up in a different location. And then Giles, with Giles, we get Giles doing Giles, right? Of like, the spell, he sings, the spell we cast with Buffy must have released some primal evil. He's like figuring it out and doing his Gilesiness. And then Buffy is like, okay, this is literally a dream. I'm in a dream. I'm waking up now. That I appreciate. But God, it's racist bullshit is what it is. There's just not another.
Yeah.
There's not another way of expressing that.
No, but on the whole for Restless, I was curious, like, magic has consequences in this world. A shared nightmare seems kind of light. And so I was wondering, like, if Buffy had not realized what was going on and woken up, would they all have actually died?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, because Willow was there struggling for the whole time. And so it was just the power of Buffy's racist inability to take the Slayer seriously that saved them all. Is that
oh, saved by the powers of racism. Wow.
Saved by the power of white
God.
supremacy in and of itself.
Can we go back to last week where the day is saved by the power of being yourself and loving your friends?
Right. Restless is a problem, you guys. It's a fucking problem.
It's a fucking problem.
It's
a problem.
It's real hard for me. I mean, it was hard for me to like this before. I've talked about Restless before, and I've always, I've never seen as clearly how horrible this is, as I did this time. Because raised in supremacy culture, sometimes you just don't see it. And here is supremacy culture basically jumping on a table and doing a dance,
Yeah.
And once you see it, you can't not see it. It's really awful.
Now,
so
do we get to see the first Slayer again on the show? I don't remember.
Yeah, we see her in season 5, and we see her in season 7.
Does she look how she looks in Restless? Like, is this
pretty much, I think, pretty close.
I guess what I'm asking is this meant to be an accurate representation of who the first Slayer is and what she was like? Because
I don't know.
Because, I mean, we know from having watched the entire episode that everyone is behaving in each other's dreams in this very dream life way. It's not, Now, maybe this is them being more themselves than they are in waking life. I don't think so. I think that it's the unconscious rendering of what these people are. So I wonder if I just wonder how much the first Slayer is the first Slayer in these dreams, in the same way that, like, how much of Tara is Tara and how much of Tara is a stand-in for the first Slayer.
Well, I think we get back to this, it's a dream conversation versus somebody wrote this, you know?
Right.
Because somebody did write this, like, regardless of in the fiction how much of anybody is anybody in a dream, this was written, you know? And I think that it is a huge unintentional indictment of supremacy culture. And it all right, so how do we transition out and back into the end of the episode?
So, Lani, how do we make the transition from white supremacy to what are you wearing? Because I suddenly, I'm suddenly not really feeling up to talking about how backstage in Willow's dream is, like, super backstagey and all of that. But it's clothing. I mean, clothing is an important part of Willow's dream. Like, explicitly what she's wearing is meaningful, at least to everyone else, right? You know,
yes.
Buffy saying, you know, your costume is perfect. No one's going to know the truth about you. And then everyone in costume in Willow's dream. I mean, Harmony is it a dirndl? What is she wearing? She's so adorable in her little milkmaid outfit.
I don't know, but it's
so great.
Adorable. Yeah.
I love that Buffy is dressed like Velma Kelly from Chicago.
Yes.
Which is a fascinating choice, given what Buffy seems to represent in Willow's dream. Yeah, there are a lot of, I mean, once again, this was written, right? This was written. Yeah. It was designed. It was costume designed and set designed, and everything looks, clothing wise, I feel like everything looks very dreamlike when it needs to. I already talked a little bit about Willow and Tara in Xander's dream looking like Robert Palmer backup dancers, which I just love. I also noticed that Olivia's makeup in Giles's dream looks similar to Willow and Tara's makeup, and I don't know what to make of that at all.
Interesting.
Other than something about, like, the intensity of female presence in those two headspaces, but I don't have a complete thought about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love Spike in his full Spike regalia. I love him in Watcher regalia, and then in his full Spike regalia being a tourist attraction. And he says, I love him saying it's showbiz as he's in black and white and being photographed by the adoring masses. Because, of course, you know, going all the way back to what I said at the beginning, you know, top of the show, you know, Restless is at least in part about the shared experience of watching a TV show. Yeah. Or watching a movie. And Spike, we know, loves TV and loves movies and loves showbiz. And Spike absolutely would be, you know, he would be selling himself as a tourist attraction. What else have I got for clothing? I know you hate Sexy Joyce. I love Sexy Joyce. I think
Sexy Joyce is beautiful. I don't like her being sexualized by Xander. That I don't like.
I kind of dig it. Have you never had, like, okay, this is a real question that you don't have to answer if you don't want to, or you can answer me and then not put it on the podcast. Have you never had an inappropriate dream about? Have you ever had a dream about
This isn't
someone?
a dream. Somebody wrote this. That's the difference. You cannot use reality is no defense for fiction. You cannot use the fact that people have had sexy, inappropriate dreams as a way to defend the overt sexualization of these characters by Xander just so that you can put Joyce in a slinky outfit. Like, somebody wrote it deliberately for a reason. So real dream world is not a defense for fictional dream world.
But if you're trying to write something that feels authentically like a dream, does it make sense to include uncomfortable elements of dreams that really...
Sure, if you have a narrative purpose to it. Is there a narrative purpose to this obsession with
Buffy's mom? I love it. I
Buffy's
don't know.
Sexy mom thing.
And then I love him addressing her.
The Milfy Joyce is just not like, I don't feel like we have a real reason for it aside from the fact that we want to sexualize these characters in ways that make me uncomfortable, objectifying women for the just pure fun of objectifying women. And again, that's just how I see it. I can definitely understand where you guys are coming from when you think it's cute and all that kind of stuff. It just irritates me.
I actually think it's more than cute. I think it's really poignant for Xander's point of view. But here I have become a Xander apologist. So,
that's okay.
Anything could happen.
I love Xander a lot too. I mean, there are times where I become a Xander apologist too, but this just is not one of them.
I enjoy it. I enjoy what they gave Christine Sutherland to wear, and she looks fantastic.
Yes.
And I appreciate it.
Yes. No, Christine Sutherland looks amazing. Yeah.
I also appreciate Xander calling Joyce Buffy's mom at the end.
Oh,
Buffy's mom.
I know.
Buffy's mom. Like, he's clearly trying to, like, deprogram his own psyche.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow. That was, like, super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course, we talked about it just a tiny bit, but Riley as Cowboy Guy. Work in that costume.
So cute.
Mark Lucas is a goddamn gift to the senses in this episode. And he is Cowboy Guy. He pulls off Cowboy Guy.
I love his enthusiasm. I got here early, so I got to be Cowboy Guy.
Cowboy Guy.
That is probably the most Riley thing that they've ever had Riley say. All right, so girl power moment of the week. What do we got?
Oh, not with a girl power bit.
There are little moments here and there. We could, arguably most of Tara. But I love Anya dealing with dream hecklers in Giles' dream. The dude goes, "You suck." And she says, "Quiet, you'll miss the humorous conclusion."
Right.
It's just like, not even, it doesn't even, like, she's unflappable in her terrible comedic stylings, which I guess says a lot about how Giles sees Anya.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's pretty cute, though.
Yeah. I enjoy that. I enjoy Anya dealing with hecklers.
I know, it's very nice.
Does anybody have anything else for girl power that's not, like, gross and white supremacist?
Unfortunately, no.
Don't think so. Yeah, no. There's not, I think that no, there's nothing. Sorry. I was like, can I reach for something?
You were so excited for a minute.
I think that Willow painting Tara's back has a very beautiful literary embracing of who they are and what they are together that I think is a nice power to it,
The power in their relationship with each other.
Power in their self-acceptance. The power of, yeah. So there's, I don't know. I don't like this episode. All right, Kelly, my love, we brought you in for this very difficult and awkward and uncomfortable episode of Still Pretty. So what's your favorite part of Restless?
Oh, it's so funny. I'm feeling like you when you guest on the Law and Order podcast. And you're like, oh, great. Let me go into this dream sequence because I love dream sequences and talk about one of the most racist episodes of Buffy ever. It's great.
Yes.
But I really do love shared dreams as stories. Spike in front of those damn cameras. Everything Tara. I just love Tara.
Yes.
But I think my favorite line is Xander telling Snyder, I never got the chance to tell you how glad I was you got eaten by a snake. I just love that.
It's pretty freaking great. It's pretty freaking great. Yeah. All right, Noelle, what's your favorite part?
Oh, my favorite part is I showed up on time, so I got to be Cowboy Guy. It's one of my most quoted lines of the entire series. Although I usually misquote it, I realized. I've been saying I got here early, so I got to be Cowboy Guy.
I think that's pretty close.
I mean, it's kind of in the spirit of all of our favorite misquoted lines. You know, Luke, I am your father. Play it against Sam. All of that. I got here early, so I got to be Cowboy Guy.
I like it.
I love it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Giles and Spike on the swings. A watcher scoffs at gravity.
So great.
I think that is probably one of the most adorable things.
If you tolerated this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on social media. Lani is at Lani Diane Rich on Twitter, and I am at Noelle Aloud on Instagram, and the hashtag is still pretty.
And thank you so much to Dr. Kelly Jones for hanging out with us for this episode. Kelly, tell the good people where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter at Dr. Kelly Jones, and I am co-hosting How Story Works Conversations with Lani, with new episodes coming March 11th.
Yes, I'm so excited. And if you are a current subscriber to How Story Works, Conversations will show up in the same feed. And the first episode is available now for patrons. So if you support Chipperish on Patreon, you can go listen to it right now. And if you don't support Chipperish, allow me to encourage you to visit patreon.com/Chipperish to find out how you can keep Still Pretty, How Story Works, and everything Chipperish Media does free and ad-free for everyone.
Speaking of which, this episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now, so thank you to our February producers. Sarah, Shelley, Kristen, Alice, Noelle, Erica, Abigail, and Jonathan. And this week's special message for our power producers: you wear the cheese. The cheese does not wear you.
Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or show up early and you'll get to be Cowboy Guy.
Yes! We will be back next time with Buffy vs. Dracula, the first episode of season 5.
Yay!
Until then, be back before dawn.